It's been rumored for quite a while, but the inevitable finally happened. Davante Adams requests a trade from the Silver and Black. It's all Davante all show long here on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for October 2nd, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that in a major way. The show continues to grow each and every day. That's because of your support and because of the support and the efforts behind the scenes. And my man Ari does a fantastic job each and every day, making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, and we're sounding good. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254, as many of you do. And, of course, also hit the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. And as you can imagine, with the news of the day that rolled out on Tuesday, there's a lot of calls and a lot of texts. So we'll get to as many as possible. If I don't get to yours, I apologize. It's nothing personal. Just don't have all the time to get to as many calls as we have, but we will get to as many as possible coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, as I mentioned, is Davante Adams all show long. No doubt about it. So in segment number 2, we'll talk about, well, what realistic compensation could look like for a Davante Adams trade and how quickly a trade could come to fruition. That'll come up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and shocking, it's all about Davante Adams. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of today's show, which is FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So it all started really early on the morning on Tuesday, and it's funny, I'm actually doing, and I didn't even get to talk about it on the show on Tuesday. I thought I was going to, but I never got an opportunity. I just ran out of time. I'm actually hosting Greeny's show on ESPN Radio on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from, well, yesterday through the Super Bowl. So I have an opportunity to do that, and it's funny, I tell you that because we were talking about what the Chiefs could do because they're suffering with so many injuries. They've been hit with so many injuries. What players may be available, what wide receivers may be available out there that they can go grab. And Paul Hembo, who I was doing the show with, mentioned Davante Adams. I was like, give me a break. So we started turning our attention to Tyreek Hill and other guys like that. Well, shortly after that show got wrapped up at 9 a.m. Pacific time, well, Vinny Bonsignor, my guy from the Review Journal, the Las Vegas Review Journal, and also Raider Nation Radio 920, tweeted out this. More on this to come. A league source with knowledge of the situation confirmed that the Raiders are growing open to the idea of trading Davante Adams. The source said the club has begun reaching out to teams to gauge interest in the veteran wide receiver. So, of course, that caught on like wildfire, especially after what I had talked about on Tuesday's show when Michael Lombardi was out there saying that Davante Adams may have played his last snap with the Silver and Black, and then there was a social media post that Antonio Pierce liked and then later unliked it. So all of a sudden, all this is starting to snowball. So you think about the social media post, you think about what Michael Lombardi said, and look, I discredited him on Tuesday's show because I know that, one, he's never had a really good, seeing eye to eye with the Silver and Black since his time when he was a part of the Raiders organization until his sons were a part of the Raiders organization, and no longer are they there. So for the most part, I wait to hear from people that I know don't have an axe to grind with the Raiders. Well, Lombardi does, so I don't really pay him too much attention, and I mentioned that myself on Tuesday's show. Well, as I mentioned, then Vinny's report comes out. And, there was a lot of folks that weren't too happy about it. A lot of folks that were even in the Raiders organization that were questioning, Vinny's sources. And I know for a fact that he talked to at least 2 people that I know very well and know that they're very credible. So when he talked to those folks and I got to the radio station and talked to him for a couple minutes, he said, look, it might not go anywhere, right? But it very well could go somewhere. And so if it happens, then just know that it's something that's been talked about. So, you take it for what it's worth. I mentioned on Tuesday's show that Davante is a guest on Kay Adams' Up and Adams show every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and 11 a.m. Eastern time, I should say. 8 a.m. Pacific time. So when I got to the radio station after me doing Greeny's show, I had a chance to go back and listen to it, and I heard some things from that show that caught my attention. And one was about the social media post, the one where Antonio Pierce liked it, then he unliked it, but it was already a screenshot. Once you do something on social media, it's a wrap. But of course, Kay Adams asked him the question about it. Here was the question and the thoughts.
So this big story happens where they think your coach, or your coach did, I actually don't know, likes this post about you getting traded. When you heard of that, I guess my first question is, how soon did you hear from Coach?
Yeah, I haven't heard from him. I haven't talked to him. So I haven't, I don't know. I don't really know exactly what that was about. Obviously, I got, social media is a beast. So it's a lot of people out there that saw it and, wondering what's going on and people reaching out. And yeah, I haven't spoke to him.
Well, I'm surprised by that. I would think okay. Well, I would think you work together every day. So if I would say, right. oh shoot, I accidentally hit that, I unliked it. Now it's this huge story. Is that just kind of like what the dynamic is? That's not something that you want to hear from him?
Honestly, it's hard to comment on. And
Okay.
I'm sure you would imagine as such, but it's one of those situations where I just keep my head down and keep doing my thing and, let the chips fall where they may as it pertains to that. But I haven't, there's been no communication with anybody from the team since that became a thing. But, it's kind of just like the weekly what's up with Tay thing. It's always some sort of drama. But at the end of the day, 1-7 doesn't create any of it. So people can say what they want, but I'm just chilling, trying to be the model for, not stirring the pot and just locking in and doing what I got to do.
So I'll tell you right now, and I said this on my radio show, and I said it with a lot of confidence on a Tuesday afternoon. That question to me sounded like a question that Davante Adams and or his agent said to Kay Adams, hey, we're going to do your show today, but I want to make sure that you ask this question. The way that she asked the question about the social media post and then immediately went to, well, how quickly did your coach reach out to you and let you know something? And then he hesitates and says, well, he hasn't reached out to me. That was one of those, we call them planted questions, where somebody asks somebody in the media or something like that, hey, make sure you ask me this question. I want to speak on this, but it has to happen. And I know for a fact that's happened with Davante before. That's happened with others before. That happened with Dave Ziegler before when he was the GM of the Raiders. I know that for a fact from being in the business, right, and being in the building. So I know that these type of things happen. To me, that was what that question was. That seemed like a planted question, and the answer wasn't very strong as far as Davante, one way or the other. It was more of I haven't heard from my head coach. And then the last question, one of the last questions she asked was, okay, well, there's a report out there, and she was referring to Michael Lombardi saying that he's played his last snap as a Raider. So here's her question and his response to that.
What I'm hearing is that here's what a lot of people think you may never play another down as a Raider. What would you say to that?
All I can control is this talk we're having right here, and then after we're done with this, all I can control is the next thing that I'm on to. So I'm gonna get up in a minute and go get a nice workout in, and that's all I can control.
31 teams are about to go at 32, including you're just gonna. Here's the thing: you have the chance to shut the door, but it's not. Here, this is what I'm hearing from Davante. It's not about you. It's you are settled, and you're on to the next. And there's a lot more going on. I hope you hear from your coach today.
Yeah,
All right.
I do too.
Thank you. Oh boy, thank you, Davante Adams. Appreciate you. Feel better, most importantly.
Immediately after I heard that answer, I said, "Oh, he's gone." Right. And I've been very, he could be gone if the Raiders aren't doing very well. He could be gone closer to the trade deadline. Oh, this could happen. If the Raiders start to stink, then yeah, I can see that happening. It'd probably be best for him and the team. But the Raiders are 2-2 through 4 games. So when I heard that response and that answer and the fact that he could have said, well, I don't control what they do, but my plans are to be here and play this week against Denver. My intentions are to play against Pittsburgh. My intentions are to be here throughout the course of the season, get this team back on track, get into the playoffs. He could have said any of that and then said, but I don't have control over what the team does. He didn't say that. He said the only thing I control is what this conversation that we're having right now and what I'm going to do afterwards, which is go work out. That's not a Davante Adams answer, right? I mean, he's very, as a matter of fact, when he talks to us in the locker room, it's always with a purpose. He always says everything. Nothing is an accident with him. He doesn't just say stuff, right? He doesn't just pop off out of emotions or anything. If he has an emotional moment and he doesn't want to say anything, guess what? He won't speak to us. He always knows what he's saying. There's a reason behind everything he says. So when he answers like that, my initial thought was, oh, he's gone. He's gone, just like that. I told anybody in the radio station building that would listen. I went into my boss's office. I had a meeting with her, around that time, and I said, oh, yeah, Davante's gone. And this is why. This is why I believe that. So, again, not going to speculate, not going to sit here and go on the radio and be like, Davante Adams is going to get traded. But then a little bit later on, matter of fact, about an hour before I went on my radio show on the Necessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, then the tweets come out from Ian Rappaport. Raiders star wide receiver Davante Adams informed the team he preferred to be traded. Per me and Mike Garafolo, there is nothing imminent, but a situation to watch for sure. Then he doubled down and said the Raiders are trying to win games, and there are plenty of scenarios where Davante Adams stays in Vegas. But there are also scenarios where he's headed elsewhere, and he'll have a market. So once that was out there, and once it was official that he actually requested a trade, then, all right, then the gloves are off. Then it's on and popping. Then Deshaun Reed from The Athletic, good friend of mine as well, said, I can confirm, this is in a tweet, that Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams requested a trade, as Rap Sheet and Mike Garafolo reported. Timing was a surprise. The Raiders are 2-2 coming off a win, but this has been brewing for a while. Adams wants to win, and Las Vegas is just 16-22 since he arrived. So, again, when I talk about planted questions, I know that there was that time when Tashawn asked Davante about the Deshaun Jackson report that he wanted out, and he wanted to speak on it. He said, I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't going to say anything, but since you brought it up, and then he went on to have some big, long rant about it, that was clearly prepared. Again, planted question. So, when I see someone like Tashawn confirming the report that was out there from Rap Sheet and Mike Garafolo, not that I needed further confirmation. Again, that was the further confirmation that was all that was needed to know that, okay, something indeed is definitely going down. Final confirmation comes from Ian Rappaport again later on NFL Network. He was talking about, basically how the Raiders and Davante Adams arrived at where they are right now.
So let's get to where we stand. Of course, this has been months and months of speculation. We know plenty of teams called the Raiders trying to trade for Davante Adams. It was always met with a, nope, not into it, not into it. The Raiders are trying to win. They're trying to win now. And, of course, Davante Adams has wanted, ever since the Raiders very famously traded for him for the Green Bay Packers, he has wanted to be a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. My understanding, and again, this is something I reported with a good friend Garafolo over there, is that yesterday this all changed. This is when Davante Adams informed the Raiders that he would prefer to be elsewhere. No doubt it has been a tumultuous season for Davante Adams. Got injured, his hamstring late in the week. There was the accidental or whatever like from Antonio Pierce on the Instagram post. I'm sure that did not go over great. And this is where we stand. Davante Adams still nursing a hamstring, still would prefer to be somewhere else. And there's going to be a legitimate and very real market. And of course, we're going to speculate on potentially where he could go. It starts, but certainly does not end with the New York Jets and his old friend Aaron Rodgers. This is something, until it happens or until we are for sure it doesn't happen, going to be a massive topic in Las Vegas and all over the NFL.
So there you go. Very, very, it's complicated, but it's not really, right? And again, there's a lot of different layers to this. There's a lot of different ways that you could point the finger and say whose fault it is. Either way, as it stands right now, Davante Adams has requested a trade. I don't know how quickly it's going to happen. I would think it would be pretty quickly if they have enough suitors. We'll talk about that in segment number 2. And more importantly, what will it take to get the deal done? That's coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get to that after I tell you about one of our great sponsors, which is PrizePicks. What is PrizePicks? It's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. As a matter of fact, it's really cool. They got so many different options for you. If you sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5, you don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead up to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. I'll tell you right now, based off of everything that happened on Tuesday, I could have used some tacos. I'm just saying, throwing it out there. So what do you need to do? Well, right now, download the app, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, it's all one word, to get $50 instantly after you play your first lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. So we know the trade request by Davante Adams is out there. So what is it going to take to get a deal done, and how quickly can we see something happen? And look, I've said it so many times, there's so many different ways and avenues and fingers we can point at why the Raiders are in the situation and why Davante Adams is in the situation that he's in right now. There's a lot of theories that are out there. I think that there's a lot of understandable conversation that is out there. But the point is, he wants to trade. Again, the Raiders don't have to, they don't have to grant him a trade. They don't have to do anything. They can say, hey, we're trying to win games. You're our best wide receiver. You're going to stay here, happy or not. That could be what they do. I don't think that that's what they do. I believe that they have more respect for Davante Adams than that. And I've said that, and I've been very, as a matter of fact, about that the whole time that he's been with the team. And ever since any kind of trade rumors ever popped up, I felt like if he ever at any time went to the Raiders and said he didn't want to be there, they would find a way to make that happen. So what is it going to cost? So, again, as I led this whole thing off with Vinny Bonsignore in his tweet, he put out a tweet later on Tuesday afternoon. He said, just for some context on a potential Raiders return for Davante Adams, he's in the last year of the guaranteed portion of his contract. He's potentially a rest of season rental for the trading team. A number 2 overall, not overall pick, but second round pick might be the best the Raiders can expect. And then shortly after that, Adam Schefter from ESPN said, ESPN sources, Raiders have informed other teams that they would consider trading wide receiver Davante Adams for a package that would include a second-round pick and additional compensation. That's from Adam Schefter again on ESPN. Then Dan Graziano on ESPN's NFL Live was talking about the compensation, not only the compensation of what they could potentially receive, what they want to receive, but how quickly a deal could get done. Check it out.
Graz, is it possible Adams gets moved before the November 5th trade deadline?
Absolutely, especially if there's motivation on his side, the team side, or both to actually do it. Second round pick and other stuff is a fairly high price for a wide receiver that's going to turn 32 in December and is making almost $17 million this year. Teams don't like to part with draft picks that high. So he's a pure rental. He has 2 years left on his contract after this year, but his salaries in those years are over $35 million, non-guaranteed. He's not seeing that money. So this year he's making 16.89. If you trade for him now, you'd have to pay him around $14 million for the rest of the year and have that much cap space. That number will go down by about $968,000 each week. If you trade for him the week of the deadline, you probably end up having to pay him about $10 million for the rest of the year. So if that is the Raiders' price, then I think it's probably going to take a little while for the salary number to get to a point where teams are willing to part with something like that in order to bring him on.
Okay, so I unloaded all that on you just so you could have some kind of frame of mind of where the Raiders are. They're around a second-round pick is what they really would like. Dan Graziano brought up a great point about it could take a little bit longer to get a deal done, only because of the money that's still owed to him this year and what they'd have to pay if they were to trade for him, say, today and get it done. Now, I'm a firm believer in don't have someone around that doesn't want to be around. Like, this is a situation where I don't even know if he's supposed to speak to the media today. Antonio Pierce is going to talk at 11 a.m. this morning. That's going to be interesting, right? And then Gardner Minshew and Davante Adams are both supposed to speak to the media today after practice, after practice. We're around 2 o'clock this afternoon. I doubt that happens. I doubt you'll see Davante Adams at the podium. And again, I don't even know if at this stage of the game the Raiders would have him around the team, because what good is he going to do when he's already been let it been known that he wants to trade, unless they're in the stance of, we're not going to trade you, which it doesn't sound like that's where they're at. Sounds like that they're willing to make a trade, but they want something in return. Now, remember, when Dave Ziegler, the former GM of the Raiders, made the trade to acquire him from Green Bay, they gave up a first-round pick and a second-round pick in the 2022 draft, right? And I had someone call my radio show and said, hey, it costs a first and a second. I think a first and a second is what the Raiders should get back. That's not happening. That's not going to happen. Davante is a couple years older. The contract is a little bit different. Someone's going to have to give him some money for the next couple years. As Dan Graziano pointed out, what he's still got left on his deal is 2 years, but that money he's never going to see because of the base salary, and there's no guaranteed money on that. So I compared it to a car when I was on my radio show on Tuesday. I said, look, when you drive a car off the lot, what happens to it? It lowers its value immediately. Well, it doesn't matter if you gave up a first and a second for Davante. A couple seasons later, guess what? You're not going to get the same return on investment. You're not going to get that first and second back. You're not. So I respect that the Raiders say we want a second and we want some other assets, right? Additional compensation, whether that's a second and a fifth, a second and a fourth, a second and a player, whatever the case may be. I like that. Right? I mean, try to get as much as you can for him because this team needs as many assets. Again, whether that's talent or whether that's draft picks or whether that's a combination of the two. I've seen the idea floated out there. How about trade him to the Jets, get Hassan Reddick, and get a draft pick? That would be awesome. I'd be fine with that. I would have no problem with that. I saw the 33rdteam.com had proposed a trade. Davante Adams and a 2025 fourth-round pick goes to the Jets for Hassan Reddick, a 2025 second-round pick, and a 2025 third-round pick. If the Raiders can do that, then I would do a backflip. And I'm not a gymnast, but I think that would be a hell of a deal if they were able to pull that off. I don't know if they're going to be able to get that, but I think that they shouldn't be just focused in on one team. I know that they want to make him happy and send him wherever he wants to go, and I know that there's apparently a list of teams that he would want to go to. At this stage of the game, the Raiders got to do what's best for them. The Raiders have got to find what team is going to give them the best offer and use that to their advantage. Look, I don't know what the Raiders' overall record is going to be at the end of 2024, but what they need to do is have enough draft capital built up and have enough stock built up so they can go and find their franchise quarterback, whoever that may be. And that doesn't mean that they have to be terrible this year, right? They can stack some picks, and especially if you trade Davante and get a couple picks in return, that's just something that you can use towards making moves to go get the guy that you really need. So, again, I feel like it's going to happen pretty quickly, but Dan Graziano brought up a good point about the money and why it might delay things a little bit. I mean, I'm looking at teams like San Francisco that's riddled with injuries, the Rams lightweight that are riddled with injuries, the Jets for obvious reasons. The Buffalo Bills have been floated out there a couple times. I could see them being a team that would be interested in him. I've seen the Chargers, but I don't think the Chargers or the Chiefs, which has also been floated out there, would be some team that Tom Telesco would be interested in trading Davante to, unless they just gave up something crazy. Like if they came with a first-round pick, I don't care. I'm trading them to Kansas City tomorrow, right? Because a first-round pick is not something you're going to get for any other team. But if the Kansas City Chiefs are so hungry for that player and they give up a first-round pick, I would go ahead and do that, even though that's probably going to be closer to a second-round pick anyway, because it's going to be later in the first round. They don't expect to be a bad team, right? They're not going to be a team that's going to pick in the top 10. They're going to be picking, if anything, in the late 20s, right? And in their mind, they're picking 32nd because they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that they are, but, so really it's a second-round pick anyway. So it might end up being a situation like that. That would not be the first team that I would want the Raiders to trade him to. The Chargers wouldn't be a team that I want to trade him to, but just because they have to play him twice a year. But again, I think at this stage of the game, you probably have to go with whatever team is going to give you the best value, the best return on your investment, right? And what makes your team better faster. That's got to be the number one priority for Tom Telesco and everyone in that office. Again, I do expect a trade to happen. I know that they said that they don't have to move him, but I just feel like that the inevitable is that they're going to go ahead and make that happen. And again, before any of these tweets came out from anybody, from Vinny to Ian Rappaport to Adam Schefter, once I heard what I heard on the Kay Adams show and I played it in segment number 1, I was convinced. I was ready to come back on this show and say, all right, Raider Nation, I was wrong. He's on his way out, because he did not give a firm answer on anything. So that was really all I needed. But to me, if the Raiders can get a second-round pick for Davante, a second-round pick and something else like they want, extra compensation, as they're calling it, whether that's a second and a fourth, a second and a fifth, a second and a player, then you got to do it. You got to do it, and you got to try to improve your team as much as you can. They look pretty decent against the Browns. I know the Browns aren't some fantastic team. They look pretty decent without Davante. They're going to have to just go the rest of the way without Davante, unless some kind of come to Jesus meeting happens and they all have some kind of kumbaya. But between business decisions, between not playing in the preseason game when Antonio Pierce said everyone who's healthy is going to play in the preseason game, and then Davante shows up at the facility, and can't practice and didn't play in the preseason game, to missing time in camp. I mean, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different scenarios that, play into this. There's been blocking has come into question when you see Davante out there, drop passes when you see him out there, lack of hustle after a guy intercepts the ball is out there. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons that have helped the Raiders and Davante get to the place they are. Is it all on Davante? Nope. Is it all on the Raiders? Nope. But I think there's plenty of blame to go around on both parties. Of course, we'll continue to talk about this in great detail because this is the biggest subject, not only for Raider Nation, but currently for the NFL. But what's on your mind? What do you think about the situation? Your calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is FanDuel. And all NFL fans, get into Week 5 with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. But again, when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, if all of a sudden you want to open up your FanDuel app and place a bet because you feel like here goes the momentum shift, here comes everything's about to change, you can do that and you can win some money. Just that simple. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. It's guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. It's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Start things off with Jacob Mazza. He's calling to talk about the Davante Adams, his trade request, and has a prediction who will be the Raiders' next quarterback. Here he is, Jacob Mazza.
Hey, Q. Hey, Ari. Jacob Mazza. CarrotDex.com, representing. I don't know if you remember this, but I called you on my birthday, March 8th, and I said trade Davante Adams for Sauce Gardner. At that time, I believed in my heart that we could have got him. I believe we could have got Sauce. But now I think it's going to be a second-round pick from the New Orleans Saints. So it is what it is. But the thing that I hate, this is what I want to talk about on your program. Josh Jacobs said when the offense was struggling last year that, I don't know, that's not my job. Davante Adams, after losing to the Carolina Panthers, says, I don't know, that's not my job. I hate that. I hate that when a player says that. That is so selfish. That is so arrogant. This is a team game. It is your job. It is your job to make the offense work, Davante. So goodbye and good riddance. You never really wanted to be a Raider. You're just a diva. Bye. Bye, Felicia. Bye. Now, here's the other part. Carson Beck will be a Las Vegas Raiders. You know how I know this? What's the capital of Nevada? Carson City. Carson Beck, Carson City, in Las Vegas. Put him in the number 7. Have him on one of those, slot machines where it's got his just Las Vegas Raiders number 7 going on. It makes too much sense in the world. I want people who want to play as a team. I don't want single. Just like, what are they, mercs for hire? And that's just how I've always felt about Davante. It was always him first, team second. Can't have those kind of players. Won't have those kind of players. And if anybody's ever listening, I don't want those players. I want Raiders. Sorry for going off on a rant. My bad. Just, Davante's been pissing me off. Anyways, thank you guys for all that you do. Just win, baby. We gotta go slay some donkeys. Now, Raiders, show me them TDs.
Jacob, thanks for the call. I appreciate you. And I got to disagree, my man. The Jets were not going to give up Sauce Gardner. I remember your call. I remember you saying go get Sauce. That is a number 1 first-round pick defensive back, young dude. They were not giving him up. I don't know where you think that they got the leverage from or they had the leverage. I have to strongly disagree. Like, I respect your opinion and all that, but I have to strongly disagree that the Raiders had any kind of leverage and could have got Sauce Gardner out of New York. Now, they can give up Hassan Reddick, right? He hasn't shown up to camp at all. He hasn't shown up to the team at all. So I can see them moving on from Hassan and making that trade. And look, I don't have any hard feelings with Davante, right? I mean, he was dealt a hell of a hand. He showed up with the Raiders expecting to play with Carr, and instead of just Carr, he got Carr, he got Jarrett Stidham, he got Jimmy Garoppolo, he got Brian Hoyer, he got Aiden O'Connell, he got Gardner Minshew. 6 different quarterbacks. He's only been with the team since 2022. His whole career in Green Bay, he played with one quarterback, and then was questioning the stability of Jordan Love, which is why he wanted out of Green Bay to begin with. So, look, I mentioned in segment number 2, I didn't get into all the details, and we will throughout the course of the week, of course. But there's blame to go around with everybody, with Davante, with the Raiders, right? And it's probably just that time. I thought it's a little sooner than I expected it to be, but I guess it's that time to make moves. And so the Raiders and the representation for Davante has some decisions to make. As far as Carson Beck goes, that's interesting, right? I mean, he's definitely an option, right? They've got so many different quarterbacks that, are intriguing that are going to be in the draft next year, from Carson Beck to Shedeur Sanders to Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward, of course, can't forget about him. There's guys, man. There's dudes, Quinn Ewers. There's guys that are going to be there. Carson Beck obviously is familiar with Brock Bowers as they play together at Georgia, so I can see you putting those two together, but not for the reason that you mentioned, because of Nevada and Carson, Nevada. That's not the reason, but I couldn't see the Georgia ties. So thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Juan in L.A. Say, what's up, Q? Being a Raider fan is tough, man. Seems like you're on a roller coaster ride that you just can't get off of. So many ups and downs. Feels like we need to start a group of Being Raider fans and talk about our experience with that. Being said, I'd like to start it off. My name is Juan from L.A. I'm 40 years old. I'm a Raider fan. Hang in there, folks. Hey, Juan, thanks for the text. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I got a dude that calls into my radio show quite a bit named Eddie in L.A., and he always says, it ain't easy being a Raider fan. Like that is his line, and it's not. There are so many ups and downs, and there's always something, right? I mean, man, it's never boring. Let's put it like that, right? One way or the other, there's always something to talk about. Whether someone's getting traded, someone's getting fired, teams making the playoffs when you didn't expect them to. Something's happening at all costs, right? It always seems like it's something. So I like that little support group. My name is Juan from LA. I'm 40 years old, and I'm a Raider fan. Hang in there, folks. I love it. Great text, man. Appreciate you. That's good for a good laugh. Up next, got a call from T. Dougie in Cali. He's calling to talk about the trade news and requests by Davante Adams, and has some real frustration in his voice. Here he is, T. Dougie in Cali.
Thank you. This is T. Dougie in California. Just saw the Davante Adams shenanigans, and as a Raider fan, it's crazy how we continue to just be involved in some sort of drama year after year after year, no matter who's at the head coach or the GM. It starts up with, Mark Davis. I don't even know where to start. Antonio Pierce liking that post. I mean, dude, you just got have a whole business decisions comment, and then you do that. What was the point of that? And then now Davante Adams on the K. Adams show, acting very nervous and sort of, hinting that something is happening, and then all of a sudden the Raiders are now looking to trade Davante Adams, and then now Davante Adams is saying he's requesting a trade. I know it was inevitable, but the way it went down is just nonsense. Why not trade him earlier? Why not trade him later down the line? I mean, it's just such weird timing, after a win, of all things. The Raiders just won, and all of a sudden now we're back to all this drama. It feels like we lost to the Panthers again. It doesn't feel good. I hope we get something in return for Adams, and something that'll help us for the future. But, it was always going to happen. It just sucks that it happened this way, and it doesn't feel good as a fan. And it's, I don't know what's happening. Michael Mayer, what's going on with Michael Mayer? I don't know. But anyway, Q, hopefully all these answers get figured out, but it seems like every week it's something new. Thanks.
Thanks for the call, dude. Appreciate you. And yeah, the timing's weird for sure, right? I mean, he requested the trade before his appearance on Up and Adams with Kay Adams. That's something that we learned, that he actually made that request on Monday afternoon. So there's that. It's not just an IG post thing. It's not just from AP saying, or liking the fact that he probably played his last snap with the Raiders and then unliking it later on. AP probably did that because he was angry. I don't know. I can't speak for AP. I'm sure he'll be asked about it today when we get to meet with him around 11 o'clock. But, I mean, he very well could have been angry and been like, all right, yeah, cool. Yeah, Tay's, played his last snap. Or maybe, he knew that ahead of time. Maybe he already knew that he's played his last snap. Maybe he was good with that. Maybe that's why on Monday's press conference when he was asked about Max Crosby, Davante Adams, and Michael Mayer this week, he said, well, Max in 17 will go be out there based off of health, and then Michael Mayer is still dealing with a personal issue. So he named everybody by name, but he didn't name Davante by name. He called him 17. So maybe there's something there. I don't know, but we'll see. So to be honest, if they were going to trade him 4 games into the season, or if he was going to request a trade 4 games into the season, I wish he had done it by, before the draft in April, right? I wish he had done it, a few months ago. Then the Raiders could have tried to put their ducks in a row and go get their franchise quarterback. Obviously, it didn't happen. I don't think Chicago, Washington, or New England was coming off their draft pick. But, man, it sure would have been nice if you had known that Davante was going to, be asking for a trade after 4 games, that the Raiders could have done everything they could to get up to that number 2 spot and draft Jaden Daniels. That would have been fantastic. Obviously, that didn't happen. So now you got to go to the next. All right, so who's the next quarterback that you'd be interested in? Now put all your eggs in going to go and get that guy. That's just my feeling on it. We'll see what happens. But thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Assassin's Ghost. What's up, Q? The Assassin Ghost here. Everyone's talking about the trade for Davante, but I don't think people are listening to the full report. Rappaport also said there's nothing imminent and that there's also a good chance Davante stays. We all should be celebrating this win and getting ready to talk trash to the Donkeys fan base. Until a move is made, Raider Nation should calm down. Peace. That's from Assassin's Ghost. And I respect that. But again, he said, Rap Sheet said there's nothing imminent, but a situation to watch for sure, right? He said the Raiders are trying to win games. There are plenty of scenarios where Davante Adams stays in Vegas, but there are also scenarios where he's headed elsewhere. I don't know in this situation when a player asks for a trade like that, and it's not just a contract holdout type situation. I don't know how repairable that is. I don't know how Davante goes into the locker room and tells the guys, hey, I'm all here with you, even though I requested a trade, right? And I don't know how he, what if his hamstring really is hurt and then he's out? The other players in the locker room think maybe he's not really hurt. Maybe he's just, faking it so he can get his way out of here. Like, there's so many things, so I understand what you're saying. Don't talk about it, or don't get up in arms about it until it's all done. But I think at this stage of the game, with so much smoke that's out there, it would be foolish to be like, well, I'm not going to leave until my actual house is on fire. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's sometimes it's like you can see it with all the different reports out there. Everyone's not wrong. So, like I said, I'm always one that waits. Just like on Tuesday, I said, I'm not really listening to Lombardi. But when guys like Vinny and Rap Sheet and Shefty and Graziano and Garofalo and Tashawn Reed and Vic Tafer and Paul Gutierrez, when all these guys are saying what they're saying and have the reports and confirmation, that's the biggest thing, the big C word, confirmation. When they have the confirmation word, that's when I feel very comfortable with, okay, something's going down, especially after he did his show with Kay Adams on Tuesday. That was, if I needed any more fuel to add to the fire, that was basically what I needed. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Still got a call from Logan in PA, a text from Gio in Northridge. We'll get to that tomorrow. Maybe we'll get to it on Thursday, as a matter of fact. Maybe there'll be a resolution by Thursday. Tomorrow we'll have the crossover edition because, as Assassin's Ghost said, we do need to start turning our attention to the Denver Broncos. So I'll have the crossover edition coming up on Thursday. So we'll do that, get ready for that. And then Friday we'll close out really strong. So we got a lot to get to throughout the rest of the week. Again, I guess the good news, the silver lining here is the Raiders are 2-2 and have an opportunity to go 3-2. And we'll talk about back-to-back victories for the Silver and Black. Now, again, they got to go out there and get it done on the field, but they do have that opportunity. I'll be on Greeny again this morning, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time. So depending on what time you're listening to this. I'll be on doing that show. It's also on the ESPN app, so you can watch it if you want to. A little confusing. Not really a TV guy, but, it is what it is. And then I'll be over there with Antonio Pierce at Raiders headquarters around 11 a.m. this morning to talk with him. And, of course, there's going to be plenty of questions about this, if not every question about this. And, again, start turning the page to the Denver Broncos. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.